Thanks everyone for joining us, and what's hopefully will be a great conversation about this new program offering that we have here at JVC Northwest. Name forthcoming, taking suggestions. Right now, very exciting name of our non-residential pilot. So we'll go over a little bit around what we're thinking about this pilot program, offer a little bit of information of how it relates to our other programs that we offer at JVC Northwest, and then have time for questions and feedback from you all as folks that are in partnership with us already or considering partnership in the future in this program or in our other programs as well. I'll briefly kind of go over some Zoom logistics if this is your first or 1 millionth Zoom call. We are recording this, so we'll send that out to folks afterwards, after this second session, and have available on our website. If there's someone that couldn't be here today that might want this information, we'll also have this slide deck and more information about how to apply, get more information, ask questions, also on our website after today. Joined here by a couple of different folks, and we'll do introductions in a minute from the voices and faces you'll hear, but Matt, who's a staff person here at JVC Northwest, will also be managing the chat. So we have plenty of time for questions at the end, but if you're like me, and if I don't write out the question as soon as I have it, it leaves my brain completely, feel free to add it to the chat, and then Matt will kind of keep track of that as we go. And then any other technical questions, Matt can help as much as he's able to through Zoom world. So we'll jump in. We probably have about 30 minutes of content to share, and then we'll have plenty of time for questions and more nuanced kind of specifics as needed. So we'll start with intros. I'm Sarah Jones. I use she, her, and they, them pronouns. I'm our associate director here, and I most closely work with our JV program. So work with the program coordinators who support our Jesuit volunteers, most of which are AmeriCorps members that live in intentional community and serve in locales throughout the Northwest, in Alaska, Washington, Oregon, Idaho, and Montana. Other two folks you'll hear from today are Ben and Chris, and I will pass to Ben to share a little bit about who he is.
Thanks, Sarah. My name is Ben Carver. I use he, him pronouns, and the AmeriCorps program manager. So I would take a role in this new program similar to what Sarah offers for the our traditional residential program. And I'll pass to Chris.
Hi, everybody. Great to see you. My name is Chris. I use he, him pronouns. I am the recruitment coordinator at JVC Northwest. So my role at the organization and within this program is to make sure that we have eager and qualified volunteers to support your agencies and the positions.
Thanks, Ben and Chris. I'll briefly go over what we'll cover today, and then plenty of time to add more nuance to that as needed. So we'll give a quick overview of what our current offerings are, and then how our new pilot program complements or fills some gaps that we don't currently offer. We'll go through what our agency or host site requirements, so what we're looking from you all in hosting a volunteer or multiple volunteers. Chris will walk us through what we're looking for in our applicants, or what you might expect from an applicant for this new program, and then offer space for questions and a little bit of our timeline of what's next. So if you've been partnered with JVC Northwest before, you may know us a little bit, but just to give an overview, we're an organization that started in the 1950s in Alaska, and really has grown from there over the past 60 some years to have value-centered service throughout our locales. So our volunteers primarily live in community. Sometimes they move to a locale to serve, sometimes they already live there, and serve full-time, so 32 to 40 hours a week at our service site. And we're centered on our 4 values. So community, social and ecological justice, simple living, and spirituality and reflection. Since about 2009, we've been partnered with AmeriCorps, which brings some additional benefits to our volunteers that serve as AmeriCorps members. So you might hear the term JV/AmeriCorps member, which reflects the two hats that a volunteer might wear in our program. So speaking of our programs, we have a quick overview of what we currently offer, and then right in the middle there is where we're hoping to grow this new program. So if you look at the left, the light green, that is our current JV program or our Jesuit volunteer program. It's a year-long program, runs from August to about June or July. It runs more like an academic year than a calendar year. And folks all come together in the beginning of the year and then end their year together in their locales. Most of our AmeriCorps members, except for a select handful, excuse me, serve in AmeriCorps positions. So AmeriCorps eligible positions. There are some stipulations within AmeriCorps of what our volunteers can't do, but primarily most volunteers serve as AmeriCorps members and serving that 32 to 40 hours a week. So the equivalent of a full-time person in an organization. They live in an intentional community of as few as 3 people or as most as 8 people. So sharing life together, pooling resources, and that housing is secured by JVC Northwest. And then folks live across 18 locales in Alaska, Idaho, Montana, Oregon, and Washington. On the right side, the little orange block there is our JV Encore program. And that's a program that runs almost a full year, September to June, open to folks that are 50 or better, as Karen, our program manager, says, and fewer hours than our JV program, so about 5 to 10 hours a week of service. And then folks live in their own housing and then gather together monthly for community meetings, shared around our values and the experiences that they're having at their service sites. Our new pilot program has a little bit of each of those current programs. So I'll let Ben go into a little bit more detail about that.
Thanks, Sarah. So the new program, before I go into all the details about what makes it or what it'll look like, just sort of talking about where it came from. We've identified a need both from our JV applicants, our volunteer applicants, folks that would like to volunteer but don't really see themselves in either of our programs, and then also from many of our current partner agencies that host volunteers and a handful of organizations that we're familiar with and who would like to partner but don't necessarily fit into either of our program models or our JV program model. And then also just reflecting on a couple of recent equity studies that we've done. We really want to strengthen some of our locale-based recruiting, so recruiting from within locale, within our communities. And then I think one of the bigger drivers recently why this is happening now is AmeriCorps, when we received the grant from them to host our regular JV AmeriCorps program, they set an expectation of how many volunteers they would like to see us hosting through AmeriCorps. And now that we have a little bit more stability in our volunteer recruiting department here, we're able to think about new ways to sort of meet those expectations that the federal agency sets for us. So a little bit about the program. We're looking at to pilot it for the first year. We're looking at about 18 members spread across Portland and Seattle. So they would be in 2 cohorts. We need a minimum of 3 volunteers to make a cohort. So we would need 3 positions or partner agencies in one or both of those locales, hopefully. And then each of these cohorts in the different metro areas would meet on a monthly basis, similar to how our JV Encore program meets on a monthly basis. And these meetings, they would follow the pattern of development that we typically see in the JV program year. So the initial ones would focus on member support, showing up and engaging in service, community formation. As the year progresses, we would incorporate more reflection activities into these, some skill building, community care, And then by spring, the programming for these meetings would focus more on vocational discernment, potentially community needs assessment and power mapping, other sorts of more focused skill building. And that would be a bit of an iterative process, deciding what those topics might be with the volunteers themselves, the partner agencies and communities. And then right at the end, we'd have a disorientation, or Life After AmeriCorps, it's called, where we could offer some trainings on resume writing, negotiating contracts, interviewing skills, sort of helping them launch into the next part of their career. Similar to our residential JV program, there would be retreats. So we'd start off with orientation, the first 4 days of service for them, held all together for the program. And then we would have a fall and a spring retreat. Any individuals who identify as Black, Indigenous, or other people of color would be welcome at our BIPOC retreats that are held in the winter. And then, yeah, those are the retreats. Some of the other benefits or some of the other expectations of this program, because it is an AmeriCorps program, capacity building project would be required of the volunteer, similar to what we do in our JV residential program. And then these volunteers would be receiving the AmeriCorps Living Allowance, which for the 21-22 service year is $15,100, and that is dispersed on a monthly basis. So looking at the calendar, we'll go over this in a little bit more detail later on, but we're launching the application today or tomorrow. It will become available for partner agencies. At JVC Northwest, we're going to begin reviewing those applications on the 22nd, reviewing the new position descriptions that come in. And we really need to decide by May 13th if this program is going to be viable. If we have enough interest from our partners, that's sort of the deadline for our recruiting department to get the word out to potential candidates and applicants. For the service year would start with orientation September 7th. It's a Tuesday, so Tuesday and Wednesday would be an orientation facilitated by JVC Northwest, focusing on what is AmeriCorps, what are the expectations of the role, you know, what is it like, what is it going to be like in this new program. And then the 9th and the 10th would be a more local orientation that we hope to co-create with some in-locale coordinator supports that we have in both Portland and Seattle, and then also with whoever the partner agencies are for this program. And the program runs 12 years. I know our residential program has some 10-month and 11-month positions. All of the positions in this new pilot program will be 12 months. So to be a host site, what we're asking to review from you is to create a full-time, meaningful service position. So these positions need to be compliant with AmeriCorps. The main requirement there is that you are a 501c3 nonprofit. And then the two main stipulations to avoid in creating these positions is, or the main ones that we see are, we can't have positions that are focused on advocacy, partisan advocacy specifically, and then any sort of proselytization. And then in the application, we'll link to the full list of prohibitions because this is an AmeriCorps position.
So if you host a current volunteer, you might be familiar with our tier system for a residential program. So touching a little bit on what are our agency costs, and they will follow kind of our tier system, but in the first pilot year, we're starting out and only have a tier 1. So this closely aligns with what a tier 1 position would be for our residential program. So the cost to host a volunteer would be just under $14,000. And that you might be hearing like, that sounds a lot like what the living allowances, and it is pretty closely matched to that. We have you can pay in a lump sum, or we also have a bit of a payment plan that I've outlined here, the first half being due in September, really at the start of the year, and then the remaining 2 quarters due in December and then February. There's also a retention schedule if for whatever reason the volunteer would be released from service or end service early, that also would be outlined for folks. And then we also collect $140 retreat fee that goes to defray some of those costs for those regional retreats that Ben mentioned, the monthly meetings, and then the BIPOC gatherings that happen for our volunteers as well.
All right, so who are our volunteers for this program? A couple of, I guess, broad general things to keep in mind when we're talking about who these volunteers are. The first is the age requirement. All volunteers will be at least 18 years of age. We won't have an upper age limit, but everybody must be 18 by the start of the program year, so early September. AmeriCorps eligibility is required for this program, which means that in order to be an AmeriCorps member, somebody must be a U.S. citizen, U.S. national, or legal permanent resident alien of the United States. And then in terms of education requirements for this program, the minimum education will be a high school diploma or equivalency, and that will be across the board for the program at large. However, as you create these positions, there is some flexibility as a partner agency to identify a specific other level of education depending on the position requirements. Of course, something to keep in mind is that the higher level of education required, the smaller the pool of applicants may be. Real brief about what the process will look like for placing volunteers and receiving applicants. So if you're familiar with our residential program, with our JV program, this is a little bit different. So volunteers at this program will be able to apply specifically to positions. The application we will use will be gauging universal suitability. So it'll be a general application, but the applicants will be able to rank their preferred positions and check which ones specifically they are interested in. Then similar to our residential program, we'll have a first round interview that we will conduct here at JVC Northwest to get a sense primarily of the applicant's suitability for the program. So talking about their motivations for service, talking about their relationship to our values as an organization, and kind of their perspectives on diversity, equity, inclusion, what it means to be a volunteer invited into an organization or a community. And then after that first interview, those who move on in the process, we will then send you as a partner agency resumes to review of specific applicants who have expressed interest in your position. So you will have an opportunity to review a pool of resumes of suitable applicants who have been conditionally accepted into the program, and then you will get to choose which of those applicants you would like to interview first. I'm going to pass it over to Ben to share the start of this kind of application and recruitment timeline, and then we'll go kind of into detail. I'll go into detail about the later stages.
Sure, thanks, Chris. So as I said before, the application to you all, to our partner agencies, is opening today, probably tomorrow morning. And we at JVC Northwest will begin reviewing those on the 22nd, so 2 weeks from today. The deadline is May 13th, so that gives 5 weeks. That's really the day that we need to know if we're going to continue investing time in this program, if we have enough interest from our community, our partner agencies. So we may accept some applications after that deadline. And then I'll pass it back to Chris.
Yeah, so once the application opens for volunteer applicants, that will be once the positions are ready to be posted. So sometime in late April, early May. And then come early June through June is when we'll begin interviewing applicants for general suitability. And then at that point, that is when we would begin sending resumes. So as a partner agency, I think you could expect to begin receiving resumes and being invited to conduct a second round interview with those applicants in June and July. And then in July and August, by August is when we'd hope to have the process wrapped up so that we can begin onboarding and officially offering and onboarding our volunteers.
So hopefully at this point, maybe some wheels are turning of like, oh, might this be a fit for us or not? And so wanted to take a little bit of time as you're thinking about a position to highlight if you host a current JV AmeriCorps member, what might be some differences that you could think about when you're identifying the needs of your organization. So if you look at the right-hand side of the screen, that white box for our current JV AmeriCorps model, our residential model. So you may or may not know already that we provide housing. So JVC Northwest secures housing, matches volunteers, and our volunteers are subleasees of the housing properties that we either own or rent throughout the Northwest. Because of that, and because of the evening and weekend community requirements for volunteers gathering together for community and spirituality nights, time together sharing life, we have some stipulations and requirements around where sites can be and when folks can serve. So our sites are restricted right now to be within 1 hour of a commuting radius from the JV house, which sometimes we've had great potential partner agencies, but it'd be too much time on a bus for a volunteer to be able to serve there consistently. And then volunteers must have 2 consecutive days off, one of which must be a Saturday or a Sunday. Really trying to align, if we're trying to align 8 people's schedules so they have shared time together to do things like grocery shopping and also do things like, sharing deeper time together. A lot of schedule matchups there. And then no more than 2 evenings past 6 p.m. once again, to meet that residential need. Our volunteers in our residential program also participate in 2 regional retreats. So there's usually 4-day weekends. And then plan 1 in-locale retreat in the winter that are identified before the start of service. So those 3 times a year that are kind of chunked out and some significant time away from service, maybe 1 to 2 to 4 days away from the service site. And then Ben will kind of highlight the shifts that we have for our new pilot that maybe fill some needs at your organization that currently our current volunteers can't do.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. So in the new program, volunteers will be responsible for their own housing. This is more similar to some of the other AmeriCorps programs that you may be familiar with throughout the whole country. So this is, we're really looking to lean into local recruitment. So folks who are already in the area have some familiarity, maybe they're living with family, have some resources available to help with the AmeriCorps Living Allowance. So in our residential program, we offer some trainings on like managing money. This is a bit more of a self-starting program for the volunteers. There's no limitation on where the service site is. It is expected that the volunteer will have a reasonable commute, but since they're not at the JV house, we don't have any sort of limitation as long as it's in the Portland or Seattle metro area. Volunteers will be participating in a monthly half-day retreat. So we haven't scheduled those yet. I think that's going to be determined based on who our partner agencies end up being for the program. We're looking at a cohort of about 18 is the maximum number. So that would potentially be 9 in Seattle, 9 in Portland. And we could figure out the best day that works for that whole group for the volunteers to take a half day off. And the same with the retreats. The 2 retreats would be separate from the current JV residential program. So we'll be scheduling those once we know who our partners are. And those would typically be within the week is the goal, within the service week. And then for recruitment, this is one of the bigger changes to this program. We're asking that all of the partner agencies post this volunteer position on your website or advertise however you advertise any sort of staff position. And then instead of having the applicant apply to you, though, just direct them to the JVC Northwest application for the applicants. So the submission process, there's 2 different tracks. We know we have a handful of partners who have gone through our online NAC portal to apply to our residential program. A lot of the information there is very similar to what we would need for this new pilot program. So if you have already submitted an application to us, successful or not, in our NAC portal, or if you've been alternated as a host, all you'll need to do is let us know that you'd like to apply. We'll reopen the application. You can add a program if that's needed, and then add a new position description. And then we have a website set up for this program. There's one signature page, and when you send that to us, we ask for the information about this new position, and that will really let us know to look in NAC and review this new position. For any of our potential partners who have not been through the NAC portal to apply, there is a separate it's about 12 or 13 pages of a fillable PDF form, and that will have the whole application, including position description information on that. In addition to that, we would be asking for some financial documents, a statement of financial position and profit and loss statement that anybody who had applied in NAC would have already submitted that.
And that's the end of what we have to share. So I'm going to stop the recording, and then